Really excited about this conversation, everybody. While we're waiting for some people to join and get started, if you can just drop an emoji or a meme in the chat and let us know how you feel about dating. And when I say dating, I mean dating in whatever context that is for you right now. So if you are in a partnership and dating to you means going out on date night, give us an emoji about what that feels like for you. If you are out in the streets and trying to figure it out, give us an emoji about what that feels like for you. If you are over it all and just dating yourself and dating your friends, meaning like going on friend dates, give us an emoji about how you're feeling about that and just give us some context in the comments here. We just want to make sure you're here, you're with us, and we want to see how everything's going. Let me see if I can add a comment to just make sure this is all working. Okay. All right. So welcome. Let me just give this disclaimer before we dive into this topic. And I'm going to read the disclaimer to make sure that I get all the language correct in the year of 2025. So the views and the opinions expressed in this webinar are those of the individual speakers and do not reflect the official position of any company, organization, employer, or other agency for which they have affiliation. The content is intended for informational and edutainment purposes only. Okay, now we have that out the way. We got a couple more people joining. Give us an emoji in the chat about how you feel about dating. If I say dating, what does that stir up for you? To see if you're in the right place. So let me just say a little bit about the Good Lounge. So my name's Janet Pope. I'm the founder of the Good Lounge. The Good Lounge is a nonprofit that I started for women, people of color, and the LGBTQ plus community, all of the intersections of those as well, of course, to make sure that we have access to tools and resources that support our financial, physical, and emotional well-being. Why, you might ask? I feel like I found myself in conversations about investment, in conversations about how to take care of my body, in conversations about my own emotional health and how to get access to better resources. And when I looked around those rooms, I did not see enough of myself. So I wanted to start something to enable us to build community and have more and more of those conversations in a way that was really authentic for myself and communities that I care about. Okay, really excited. Please subscribe, follow us. There'll be more of this in 2026, and just want to keep the momentum of this going. And I'm always excited for these conversations. If you've given up on dating apps, if you're wondering if you're being chatfished, which is a new term for me, means your text conversations don't match the person in front of you when you go on the date and you're wondering what happened. Is this feels like a whole different person? If you've ever felt like your date is more interested than the alerts on their phone than they are for you, then you're in absolutely the right place. We are here today to explore the intersection of dating over 40 and tech. And I'm excited to have a real conversation about dating at this big age and how we can build better human to human connections despite all the tech disruptions. This is called Unfiltered Connections. And with that, I want to make sure you know who is on this webinar with me. Let me first turn it over to Dr. Elizabeth Whittington. Introduce yourself to the people, please.
Hello, everyone. As Jenna said, I'm Elizabeth Whittington. I am an educator. I'm a professor at a local university here. My first PhD is in communication, such as human communication. And then I'm currently a doctoral student working on my PhD in marriage and family therapy. I am the founder of Get Whitt Therapy. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist associate. And I focus on individuals, couples, and families, and I specialize in the queer and BIPOC community. Enabling safe spaces, kind of what Janet said. When it came to therapy, I realized that I didn't find a space that felt safe to me. And so I decided to go back to school and become a therapist so I could provide those spaces.
Okay. Unique, please introduce yourself. And we love having you back. You've been on here before.
What's up, y'all? My name's Unique Simmons. I am a community activator, educator, former therapist. I am also in my doctoral program studying screen-based addiction for child and adolescents. And so this right here is right up my alley. I mean, I know we're talking about adults, but the whole technology and just balancing that is my lane. I am the founder of For the People, which is a social impact business. So we do things out here in the streets that curate experiences for us to have in-person interactions and build stronger communities together.
Awesome. Okay. Good. Love it. And again, if you just joined us, drop an emoji in the chat. Let us know what you think about dating. And I mean that in the broadest sense, just trying to get a sense for who's in the audience. So we know based on research, based on conversations, based on where we are in our own lives, that many people dating over 40 value authenticity, transparency, trust, emotional maturity, and really are looking for these things, maybe because we've experienced a lot, but we value these things and understand that it's important to sustain a relationship. At the same time, many sources show us that tech like social media, dating apps, over reliance on ChatGPT are widening some of the skills gap. So communication skills, lack of social skills, presenting a paradox of choice. So some people get on dating apps and feel like they have a lot of choice. Some people get on dating apps and end up depressed and feel like they don't have enough choice or any choice. I'd also say on social media, the algorithm is feeding into a false sense of consensus where everything you see you agree with and you double tap on because that's literally how the algorithm works. And so you probably think a lot of people agree with you. When you think about all of this and the impacts to long-term relationship health and our ability to connect and maintain healthy relationships, I love your perspective. Let's start with Dr. Whittington. What do you think is the biggest factor of dating fatigue today?
So, this was such an interesting question to me. And I polled a couple of people and I thought about my own experiences when thinking about this. And so, one of the things, or two, I guess you could say, is time and energy. You spend so much time and energy with no guarantee of a positive outcome. And for me, as a single mom, I don't want to waste my time when I can be spending my time with my children on somebody who we just aren't aligned. And that's a hit or miss. Like you can't find that out. Some people are like, well, you have a lot of conversations before you actually go out on a date. But in the age of online dating, a lot of that happens just online and you can be somebody completely different.
Mhm.
Um, when talking to a couple of other people, they said it was exhausting when trying to hold a conversation with someone who doesn't have the ability to hold a conversation. Also trying to get to know someone authentically, but they're trying to be this person that they think you will like. So you're not getting an authentic person. Um, and then, of course, with social media platforms, you are looking at what other people are saying dating should look like, and then when it doesn't align when you're on a date, you're like, this isn't it. And the example that came up for me, I don't know if y'all remember, but it was a few, maybe a year or so ago, when they came out with that list of places that you shouldn't take somebody on a date, and
Mhm.
everybody like started being like, "Oh, don't go to Cheesecake Factory." I was like,
Yeah.
"Hold up, I like Cheesecake Factory,"
Right.
and so things like that, and people jumped on that bandwagon, and I was like, "Man, okay, this is where we're at now." So, those are a few things that came to mind for me.
Awesome. Unique, what are you thinking on this particular topic?
Yeah, I only got one thing to add to that because I'm in alignment. Um, ain't nobody outside, man. And when I say outside, I'm talking about beyond hookahs and a dance floor, right? I'm talking about like real places. And so being someone that works from home or have the ability to work from anywhere, I've been a more intentional about being outside this past year and a half. And yeah, they ain't outside, right? And so I think it's about, you know, disconnecting from technology and really inserting yourselves back into community spaces. And community spaces can look like just going to the grocery store, like put the Instacart and the DoorDash down, walk through the aisle so we can bump into each other. Like it's no one in the aisles anymore. And when they are, they're Instacarting or DoorDashing. So they're in a rush. They're not looking to make an intimate connection. The museums are empty. The libraries are for sure empty. And so again, I think when we use the term outside now, I think we just need to be a little bit more intentional about how we show up in those spaces.
Yeah, so, I mean, it sounds like your point is if you're going to be somewhere where you're trying to connect and meet people, but you're on a device the entire time, you're kind of missing that connection and that point. So yeah, that resonates for me. So I'm someone who cares a lot about definitions. I think it's important to be aligned when we're talking about terms and terminology so we can all be on the same page and just all understand what we're actually talking about. There's a lot of terms floating around I'm happy more of us are really engaged on our mental health journeys. And at the same time, I'm finding people are overusing terms like narcissist and everything else, right? So there's a couple terms I just wanted to talk through in the context of this conversation. Let's start with the terms that I say are related to like the pace of a connection. So love bombing versus breadcrumbing versus dating with intention versus taking time for genuine connection. Those are all could potentially be perceived differently depending on the person you're talking to. And so Dr. Whittington, please help us understand from a therapy perspective, what's the difference in what these terms mean?
Okay, so with love bombing, you can think of this as an intense, overwhelming display of affection and attention in the early stages of a relationship. Often it's used to implement manipulation, gain control, or create dependency. Some of the key traits that you'll think about when looking at this is quick declarations of love or desire for long-term commitment. So, day two, I love you. I know this is love. I've never felt like this about anybody before. Um, and then also excessive compliments and gifts. You just met today, and by Christmas, they're buying you a $500 pair of earrings. And so, some red flags to look out for. It feels too good to be true. It probably ain't true. The pressure to move quickly. If you're like, I'm putting my boundaries up, and I like to just kind of get to know somebody in the beginning. I'm not trying to rush into anything. And they're like, no, 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 no. But this feels so good. You should just don't worry about your boundaries. Your boundaries are walls. No. And then the person becomes possessive or critical when the boundaries are set. So this idea of like, I'm gonna call you every 5 minutes because you're not answering my call until you answer my call, right? So those type of things would be considered love bombing.
Yeah, that's and before you move on, and Unique, I mean, there's so much to say here.
You already know where I'm going with that, but
let me just ask this question before you dive in, because who knows where we're gonna go. But can someone be love bombing and not know they're love bombing? Like, I think we're clear on when it's manipulative, but can someone be doing it because they think it's an expression of love and they're maybe, I've heard people call it like a lover girl. Talk to me a little bit about that. Like, can somebody be doing this and not realize that they're doing it? And how
Absolutely.
it lands on the person. Okay.
Absolutely. I think where that comes in though is that when somebody's telling you, hey, we need to take it back a little bit, right? This is too much. Or, somebody saying, hey, I need to like know when you're online, so can you turn on your thing where it shows the green light, your status? That's an invasion of privacy, right? But people, a lot of times we learn from the relationships we were in before, right? And don't get me wrong, love bombing may feel real good. I have been a victim of love bombing. I was like, ooh, those words, her words are so good. And then after like the first week, it was like real intense. And I was like, wow, okay, this is
Mm,
a little too much, right? But I don't know if she thought of it as love bombing. And so those are
Mhm.
things that I'm like, if you know the term and you know what it is, depending on their response when you bring it to them, that can tell you a lot. And if you already have your boundaries set in place, you already have certain standards that you like to live by when it comes to dating relationships, then it's a quick, like, I'm out of here. Somebody put it, you get blocked so fast, that part. Okay. And
right,
she sure did get blocked. Um,
right.
because it was like you can't have a conversation because they're trying to convince you of other things.
Absolutely. Okay, Unique. Sorry, please. I know you want to jump in.
I mean, I don't know if I have advice for it. Janet, I've expressed to Janet as well around like accessibility, right? So the person may be going in with true intent to show chivalry or courtship, right? And that person may be receiving that as love bombing. So if we go out on a trip out of the country, that may not be a grand gesture to the person that's presenting it, but the one that's receiving it may see it like that. And so I think that that's where the gray area is. And to your point, you just have to be aware of the signs. And when those yellow flags start to creep, you got to pay attention to them.
Well, and I'll never forget, I got the best advice from a professor in a class on relationships. And she said, don't plan anything out longer than you've known the person. So if I've
Mm.
known you for a week, I'm planning for the next week. I'm not planning for the next year. And then that way, that was like some sage advice because I was like, man, why am I over here planning December? I mean, planning Christmas and it's February. And I'm thinking about what we got for Christmas. It's too soon. You just met the person.
Mhm.
So slow it down. If this person's supposed to be here forever, they'll be there.
Yeah, that's good. And then, did you talk a little bit about breadcrumbing as well?
Not yet. No, not yet.
Let's
So
do
breadcrumbing,
that.
yeah, breadcrumbing is interesting too. Janet and I have talked about this, but it's when someone gives you just enough attention or communication to keep the other person interested, right? So
Mhm.
keep you interested. They're just giving you enough that you're like, but there's no real intention behind it. There's no commitment. There's no moving forward. You're just kind of stuck in the same place. Some of the things you can think about are like there's no follow through for plans or dates. It's like, yeah, we can hang out sometime.
Mhm.
But they keep you emotionally invested without any real effort. And so then you're like, dang, but it feels like they like me. And they're like, yeah, I do like you. I do. But then you're like, so would you like to hang out? Ooh, I'm gonna get back to you. Um, and so those things, like if you feel like you're confused, if you feel like you're constantly waiting for something, that's the time to have a conversation. And when you feel like they're feeding you some BS, you call BS on that.
Mhm.
And that's when you know you need to walk away. And it's hard because especially when you feel like you're really attracted to that person, it's hard to do that.
Yeah. So those are sort of examples of the extremes, right? So like throwing the love on like a fire hydrant, let loose on full spray, and just giving you a little dose at a time, just enough so you don't feel ghosted, but not enough to show any real concern or effort. So from my perspective, those are the extremes. These two in the middle, and getting closer to what I think people are wanting to do, but maybe two different sides of the same coin. Dating with intention versus that's on the love bombing side, but closer to healthy, and then taking the time for genuine connection is
Mhm.
on the breadcrumbing side, but closer to healthy. So can you talk a little bit about these two? Because I imagine if you have two people that are still on opposite sides of the spectrum, but closer to healthy, they may look at each other like this isn't working for me. So talk a little bit about that, and then I'll turn it over to Unique as well.
So, intention was one of those things that I learned when I'm thinking about dating. And you can think of love bombing as intensity. But then when you think about dating with intention, it's being clear about your goals in dating and forming what this relationship is going to be, what you're interested in, not necessarily with that person. So, for instance, I had a friend who said when she met her now husband, he was like, I will let you know in 6 months whether I can see myself spending the rest of my life with you or not. And he was like, that's kind of like what I say in order to not lead people on. Some people, it doesn't have to be a timeline. It doesn't have to be 6 months. Some people, it could be 3 months. I'm not focusing on a timeline, but it's really establishing with the person, where do you want to go? It's exploring that compatibility, forming these conscious bonds, like these conversations that I'm having, they're intentional. I'm trying to find more out about you. Um, when I think about so we did red flags for the top one. Green flags are consistent communication and follow through. When they say they're going to do something, they follow through with it. And interest, I loved this. Interest in your life beyond physical attraction. We live in a society that attraction, especially physical attraction, is so important, right? And so, what else is there? Like, yes, you keep calling me beautiful, but what else do you have? Um, and then, the emotional aspect that they're willing to pour into it. When we think about the taking time for genuine connection, this one involves slowing down, not breadcrumbing, okay, not pulling them along, but slowing down to really get to know that person, knowing them emotionally, mentally, relationally, without rushing it or trying to perform some type of
Mhm.
ideal for them. You prioritize presence over performance. You prioritize quality over quantity. You're building trust over time, and you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable and let those connections unfold naturally without feeling like, is this too much? Is this too little? Da, 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 right? But really taking the time to feel like, I feel like this is important for me to tell you this or to explore this. And then honoring somebody's emotional safety. If they're saying, I don't have the capacity for this, honor that. Honor that in the conversation that they're trying to have, because they may want to come back to that later when they feel like more trust is has been there. Always respect pace and boundaries in this one. That's a green flag. And then the depth of the conversation. It's not just surface level. It's really trying to see that person and who they are.
Love that. Love that. Unique. What are you thinking about this conversation so far?
Yeah, for me, it's really about enjoying the dating process. I think one thing that Elizabeth talked about was removing the timelines. And so society has put an immense amount of pressure on, you're 40, you should be married, you should have kids, you should have a house, you should have all these things. So people engage with one another and then they instantly think about, when am I going to be your girlfriend? When am I going to be your fiance? When am I going to be your wife? And you're not taking the time to enjoy the ride, right? Enjoy the experience and get to know that person in its depthness. And so on both ends of the spectrum, I believe it's really about being present and enjoying the dating.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, when I think about a lot of the more recent sort of love stories, it's almost they almost are saying like, oh, I just gave up on the whole thing, and then this person appeared, which is kind of interesting in terms of where you direct your energy. Let's move to what I would categorize as respect. So Elizabeth and I have had a number of debates on where I'm about to go, and some people have probably heard us on another podcast talking about this one because I'm so passionate about the respect line. And so the difference between boundaries, standards, expectations, and control. And let me just say, a lot of people are getting this wrong. You are using boundaries to control people, and that is not
Mhm.
what they are for. So Elizabeth, please help us. What are the definitions of these?
So standards, a real quick one. What do you hold yourself to? So it's the baseline of your principles, your values, your level of quality you commit to yourself, how you live, act, and treat others, right? So some examples: I treat others with honesty, and I expect to be honest in return. I expect somebody to be honest back with me. I value punctuality, and I always show up on time. I don't engage in talking about others, those type of things. So standards guide our self-respect and our behavior. Now, when we look at boundaries, what you will and will not tolerate, however, boundaries are the limits you set around what behaviors, treatment, or circumstances you will accept from others. From others in the broad term. Don't say, you, I
Mm-hmm.
don't accept this from you. You need to do this. Um, it's saying things like, I'm not available for work messages after 6 p.m. I don't do dates after 8 p.m., right? It doesn't matter who comes along. This is the boundary that you have set. Um, these boundaries protect us emotionally, mentally, physically, and they're non-negotiable and help define your space. They're so important. Like, you know your boundaries, you're halfway there. Okay, expectations. This one is very interesting to me. It's what you hope or assume will happen. Expectations are the beliefs or assumptions you have about how others should behave and how events should unfold. Now we do these expectations and we hold people to expectations that sometimes can impact relationships that we could have, right? And so there's a difference behind that, because if it doesn't happen, is that still okay? So expectations can support mutual understanding. You can set out your expectations, but also understand that somebody may be like, I can't meet that expectation, right? One of the examples is, I expect friends to respond to my text within a day. I can't be your friend if that's the case. I'm gonna
Me
try
either.
real hard. But if that's your expectation, that's gonna be a little difficult. Um, so, and some people have very high expectations for themselves and for others that can be impractical. Um, so control. Okay. So when it comes to control, it's the, I can't even say wanting, almost like wanting to force somebody to act a certain way, right? So when it comes to something like, somebody will say, well, my boundary is to the person that they're dating. My boundary is that you can't talk to so and so after 6 p.m. That ain't no boundary. Mm-mm.
Mm-hmm.
You are
Mm-hmm.
controlling the other person by telling them what they can't do. That's not a boundary. A boundary would be, I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who talks to other people after 8 p.m. Right? And that's a boundary that you came in with. That's something that you've learned along the way, but you want to be very careful, because sometimes, and a lot of times, people are using boundaries as a way to control, and they're not boundaries.
Absolutely. Unique. What are you thinking, friend?
I mean, she's preaching to the choir. The long and short for me is really, there's nothing out here that should cost you your peace. And so I always prioritize peace over potential. And so when I'm assessing boundaries, standards, expectation, I'm centered in my peace, and whatever that looks like. And so I would just add that as another element as you start to explore in person these connections.
Yeah, no, that's good. So the last thing I want to just get clear in terms of definitions is this concept of relational integrity. So are we talking about authenticity, transparency, vulnerability, or honesty? And what are the difference in these terms?
Great terms. When we think about authenticity, it's being true to yourself. Your authenticity is an alignment between yourself, those values, those beliefs, your feelings, and your outward behavior. And so it's about showing people your real self without pretending to be someone you're not. So from jump, you're being your most authentic self, your most real self. Um, Speaking and acting, so you can think about key elements, speaking and acting in ways that reflect your true thoughts and feelings, not trying to pretend to be somebody else so that you can get approval.
Mhm.
Um, Authenticity asks, am I being real right now? For honesty, oh no, you said, um, what was the one you said? It was not on. No, transparency.
Yep.
Transparency is letting others see the process. I love transparency, and we're going to talk about the difference between transparency and honesty. So, transparency involves openly sharing relevant information, intentions, or reasoning. It's not just about being truthful, which is honesty, but it's also being clear and forthcoming, especially about your decisions and actions that may affect somebody else. Key parts of this is being open about your motives or changes. You're allowed to be intentional, right, with somebody and say, this is where I see it going. However, when it's not going there, you can change your mind, but you have to be open with that person. You don't start doing behaviors that have them questioning what's going on here. And then transparency asks, am I clearly communicating what someone needs to know? When it comes to honesty and this idea of telling the truth, right? This is what we've always been told. It's the idea of not being deceptive, not what's the word people are like, it's not lying, right? If I just don't say anything, but
Omitting.
lying by
Omitting.
omission, yes.
Mhm, mhm,
So
mhm.
you want to leave that out. Honesty is one of those foundational areas for trust. You want to know when you ask somebody something that they're going to be truthful in their communication, that they're not going to lie to you, they're not going to give you half truths, or they're not going to manipulate you. Honesty asks, am I being truthful in what I say and do? Those are so important. The last one, vulnerability. This one, even as a therapist, is really hard for me, especially as a Black woman in America. But vulnerability is allowing ourselves to be seen. Vulnerability is the willingness to share your feelings, needs, fears, or uncertainties, even when you're at risk of being judged, misunderstood, or hurt. It's not a weakness, it's an emotional courage. A lot of times people may think, I can't be vulnerable because that's going to show that I'm weak. Um, it's openness to emotional risk, sharing truths that make you feel exposed, but with that, it creates deeper connections through this ability to be authentic with somebody. And then lastly, vulnerability asks, am I willing to be seen even when it feels uncomfortable?
Okay, let me play this back just to make sure that I learned the lesson that I came here to learn today. So, what I think I heard you say is honesty. When I think about like everything you needed to know, you really learned in kindergarten. Honesty is this base level of, I'm doing what I said I would do, or you asked me a question and I answered it truthfully. Like that's that base level, which is honesty.
Mhm.
Transparency is making sure that I'm also telling you what you didn't actually ask. So the
Okay.
people who like to omit or lie through admission or think they
Mhm.
can walk the line, they're not being transparent, because
Mhm.
transparency is going a step to even answer the question that you didn't ask, but I
Mhm.
know is on your mind based on the conversation that we're having.
Mhm.
Authenticity is get out the chat GPT and stop letting it answer the questions for you. It's
Mhm.
how do I show up as
Mhm.
myself,
Mhm.
because that's going to make sure that our human to human connection is authentic, even
Mhm.
if it means we don't agree about everything. Or,
Mhm.
I show up as the tech nerd and you show up as the really artistic person. We're still being authentic in our connection and are connecting in ways that make sense for us. While
Mhm.
vulnerability is me kind of wearing my heart on my sleeve a bit and not just telling you what I think feels safe, but going above and beyond to make sure that you can connect with me in ways that are a little deeper than surface, because I'm sharing more of myself for a deeper connection. Did I
Mhm.
did I get at least a B plus?
That was really good. I want to add to the vulnerability part, I always tell my students in relational communication classes that I teach that the amount that you self-disclose, it's our human nature to want to self-disclose as much. And so that's a key indicator. If you're telling somebody something, the way that they respond, or if they share something just as intimate or deep, that's a green flag. That's a, oh, yes, okay. But if they're like, oh, okay, you may want to watch out for that one.
Yeah, well, they might be collecting the tea, so you
Mhm.
definitely got to be careful. But I know vulnerability is also a good one in leadership, because the thing that they'll make sure a good leader that's a vulnerable leader will be the first one to share something, which opens the door for other people to feel comfortable to share things as well. That's a conversation for a whole different day. Unique.
Mhm.
What are you thinking about relational integrity?
I think, when we talk about these key implications, and I think about young people, they hit all of those points now behind the screen, right? So when you think about Twitch and streaming, they are transparent, vulnerable, honest, because they're doing it in real time. And so for me, that's a stream of income. So it's not about taking those things away, but how can you maintain that in person in real time? And so in my experience in talking to, people in my network, when you get in person and in front of someone, that is where we're starting to see, them not being as vulnerable. But if you go check out their Instagram or their live stream, they're having deep conversations, and I don't want to say it's sad, but I think that is a challenge, right? And so before we can get there, my rule of thumb has always been like, are you in therapy? Like that's like my second or third question when I'm engaging with someone, because I think when you're doing your like self-discovery and being self-aware on how you get to these places, whether that's through the lens of vulnerability that you may struggle with or being honest, it takes some work, and it's not one or two therapy sessions. And when you think about therapy, it doesn't have to be conventional, but it should be with a professional.
Yes.
And that's the difference between edutainment. And yes, there are some esteemed therapists out there that I even follow that, give me insights to some of the work that I'm doing. But I think you have to take things a step further and do your own research and consult with, again, a professional, because you're not going to go, you shouldn't anyway, go speak to someone about your heart, that's just doing a YouTube at 8 o'clock every night, right? And so you have to think about your mind in that same critical capacity. So I would say for me, it's really rooted in the self-awareness piece and what we're doing to become more self-aware about ourselves and our habits.
Absolutely. I love that. I'm going to start with you for this next question, because we dug into a number of terms with Elizabeth here. So just for some context, we're at a big age, and people over 40 are more likely to have lived some life, and they've either been divorced, they may be widowed, they may be unpacking just long-term relationship grief, even if they didn't have those titles. They may be parenting children of all ages. Mm-hmm. They may be caring for aging parents at the same time. They may be balancing very demanding careers. There's data that shows that people typically earn the most that they're going to earn in between the ages of 40 and 55. And so with all of these things going on at the same time, and also thinking about building human to human connection as a skill, because I think about everything as, I'm building a skill. And when I say skills in this context, I mean empathy, I mean communication, I mean conflict resolution, self-regulation. And self-regulation is a good thing. If someone's telling you, I need a minute, maybe give it to them, because that's their way to self-regulate. But with all of those as skills, I would love your thoughts on how can people over 40 intentionally build or rebuild these skills to improve our human to human connection?
Yeah, that's a great question. I first tell people to start in your single season. Like, you have to really enjoy your single season. I know that it's tough. Everybody looks like, they're married, happy together, and we want to push ourselves to get out of it. But enjoying your single season will allow you to, one, get the professional experience in terms of developing where you are, right? And that does look like, by the way, of a therapist, restorative communities, building the people around you up. I like to really lean into my network, my village of friends, the group chat, and assess it. Look back of the last year and say, like, how has my friendship groups evolved? Do I need to change the people that are around me? Are they building me up or holding me back? Because if you're the person that's always pouring and no one is pouring into you from your immediate village, then I would suggest that you do some of that self-awareness practice or research to help you like build those skills there. So I'm always going to say therapy first. That's just my lane, and it's been my lane. But I would say second is really leaning into your village. If you don't have one, I say lean into some of your primary places first. So if you're in school, get active beyond just your classwork, right? So if you're at the graduate level or the undergrad level, show up to the community days, give back, show up to the alumni networks. Like, those are ways to expand your village. If you're in the workforce where you're in office, do outside office dates, chats, all the things. Take a 10-minute break to walk with someone. And this is how you organically build community in places that you operate in, generally between 9 to 5. So for me, it's going to be therapy, man. That's where you start. And therapy, just so that I can advocate for all of our mental health professionals, should not be a reactive response. Therapy should be perceived as a preventative measure. It is the way, or one of the ways, to help you navigate a space in a more healthy and authentic way. It also allows you to discover things about you that can benefit your relationship beyond the things that you see on the surface level. And so I'm hoping that as people like Elizabeth continue to do the work in the community, that we start to change how we perceive seeking out professional help to help us become better human beings.
Very well said, Unique. And I mean, absolutely, there's still a stigma around therapy and mental health for many, many, many people. And I know that men, especially men in the Black community, where I'm always just trying to encourage to make sure that they're in therapy and don't feel like you said, that it's a reactive thing or a negative thing to be actively in therapy. So thanks for calling that out. You also, when you were sharing the specific things that people can do to build community, I recently saw someone sharing a really unconventional way to do this that I thought was interesting enough to potentially share here. And she just talked about, I think we mentioned briefly, like taking yourself on a date and loving yourself and doing these things for yourself so that you're used to these things happening. I know people that buy themselves flowers, so that, and there was a kind of cute thing that was going around. It was like, so your dusty son, like when he buys the flowers, the daughter doesn't think a lot of it. It was in jest, but there's some truth to it, right? If you're doing these things for yourself, if somebody comes around and they just do the bare minimum, you're not impressed by that because you've been doing this for yourself all along. She also leaned into how she became a regular at a restaurant or a bar. And by becoming a regular, it leaned into some like relational friendship needs. Like if you're moving to a new city, you don't know anybody, becoming a regular built a sense of community, because if you don't show up, they're like, hey, where have you been? If you're always ordering the same dessert to go, was the example she gave, they're going to anticipate your needs. Hey, I know you want this dessert to go. And it just enabled her to kind of build some community in ways that, you know, again, if somebody's moving to a new city and just hasn't had an opportunity to make friends, it's a way to start a community really small, which I thought was a really cool, unconventional way to do that.
That dating yourself thing is real, though. I want to double down on that, right? Yeah. The dating yourself thing is real, and it goes back to the standards. The standards are low out here, and it could be due to people not dating themselves. So I wanted to bring that back to the forefront, because how you treat and value yourself, how could you expect any more from someone else? So set that bar high so that you can navigate the love bombing and the breadcrumbing and all of those things with a quick, I think somebody said in the chat, with a quick block or move around. And it starts with you. So I'm all for dating yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dating yourself, and don't, you know, I know a lot of people like, oh, I wanted to go to the concert, but I didn't have anybody to go with me. Go yourself. Man. Or, you know, I wanted to go to the show. Take yourself, or take, you know,
go yourself.
Love on yourself.
I've made some of the best connections this year being outside by myself. Like, seriously, like going to concerts, traveling by myself. Like, I'm telling you, it's next level, and it really continues to like raise your own internal bar.
Yeah.
And so when that person, you know, comes to you, they have to come correct, because, you know, again, what value are you adding? You know, are you a liability or asset? I think they used to say that back in the day as well, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that also perhaps intimidates people because they haven't done the work, you know, to build themselves up to engage with other people, which is why it's so difficult for the in-person connections for people over 40, because you have a very small percentage of people that have done the work, they're being intentional, and then you have the large population of people that have not done the work and are afraid to put themselves out there. And my best advice is just do it, you know, and this is one way. So if you join tonight, like this is an opportunity for you to like download, do one thing different, right? Like take one piece of information here and see how that works for you. And, you know, from there you can start the self-discovery and building yourself up.
Absolutely. Okay. Elizabeth, anything you want to add on this one?
No, I think everything that you all said was really great. I actually did do that. I go to a bar when I travel to school during the semester. And so I found a bar every Wednesday before I go to class. I go order the same thing. I got me a little bartender. Her name is May.
Okay, May.
And, you know, I've met random people who I saw 2 weeks in a row. And I was like, hey, I know y'all. And they were like, hey, do you know where we could do it? And I was like, man, this is okay. And that's one of the things that was my suggestion is go to a social place, make yourself start up a conversation. I know somebody said, you know, if you're burnt out and can't socialize, I'm somebody who I'm like, I'm going to do once a month. That's all I got in me. It's once a month. And so, but it does take me out of my comfort zone, and I strike up a conversation. It doesn't have to be somebody I'm attracted to, but it lets me know that I'm practicing communicating, holding a conversation with somebody who may be very different from me, but I'm able to have a conversation and practice those things at a low stakes level. So that's really important to really like make those connections and not always think it has to be romantic.
And that is a whole word in itself. Some of us really do need to practice these conversations. We need to practice talking to strangers. We need to practice social, because something happened in 2020 and some of us have not been using these skills and continuing to build these skills. So definitely love that. I got a little bit of a blessing in disguise by working in a company where I literally for a decade traveled almost every week. and had to sometimes eat dinner by myself. And it taught me and got me comfortable with just going to a bar and having dinner and striking up a conversation with random strangers. I didn't know that it was building some social muscle, but even as an introvert, I can figure it out. So we can all figure it out. There's a couple questions in the chat I want to make sure we address before we run out of time. So this is maybe related to what we were just talking about. Do you approach people outside for connection, or do you wait to be approached?
Oh, I'm trying to holler. And
Me
I got
too.
no game.
I was about to say, I'm an
Okay.
approacher.
I'm like, hello, my name's Elizabeth. What's my name? And I go from there. Like, I'm gonna, and you know, I was talking to somebody, a friend of mine, who was like, but the rejection, you know what? If I come and I'm just like trying to speak, I may just ask a couple of questions. And in those couple of questions, I realize, oh, I don't want to really put myself and be like, hey, maybe we should exchange numbers. But if the vibe is good, and another friend of mine said, I just started friendly. I don't have to come and be like, oh, you look good.
Yeah.
You smell good. Like, just ask the person, how are you doing? Are you enjoying yourself this evening? You know, that type of thing. Because you may realize after a few sentences, this ain't where it's trying to be, but you already got their number. And in today's age, literally people come up to you and say, so what's your IG? I'm like, you didn't know my name.
Right. No, that's good. Unique. Anything else?
I mean, at least she getting feedback. When you got to put me on game, because for me, it's the inability to hold a conversation. So it's like, you know, speaking to someone just genuinely, and people like, you know, what you talking to me for? Like, do I know you? And it's a simple like, hi, how are you? You know, what do you usually get here? This is my first time. You know, just a very basic, friendly connections that are being attempted. So the answer to the question is yes, I definitely approach, but it's very rare that it goes anywhere because people aren't used to people approaching them or don't have the capabilities of holding a conversation.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit more about rejection, because I'm a millennial, and we used to dance in the clubs, and this involved a form of rejection. So you would walk up to someone, or someone would walk up to you, and they would want to dance. And I mean, there's memes about like the tap tap and the look back and like
and the move around,
and the move around. But I say all this out loud to say, like, we as people from that age group, I feel like with that, you learned how to just deal with rejection, because if somebody told you no, or if you said no, you said okay, and you moved around to until you found somebody that wanted to dance with you, right? But I feel like it's so easy, because everything's digital now, to just ignore people completely, or I don't know, people make it awkward and like it's cringe because you just walked up to say hello. So there's something in the middle. There's something that's gotten lost in rejection, and like people just aren't used to how to navigate that. And I think it's made us a different society, that we aren't kind of used to rejection, and we almost fall apart in any form of rejection, whether that's in the workplace or relationally. So yeah, there's more to explore there. Before we run out of time, I do want to make sure we have an opportunity to share any resources that you're thinking about. And I want to leave on a lighter note as well. So how should we, as audience members of this webinar, continue to stay grounded, hopeful, discerning, based on all the dating advice online, the recirculated influencer content, the stuff that makes us just want to throw the whole thing away? What's your tips for us, and any resources that you want to share?
Did you look at my notes? Because I literally feel like that discernment popped up for me. I definitely said balance is key, and knowing that not all advice is good advice, and that is okay. You learn to discern what works for you. Right. And somebody posted about that. Like, you start to understand your vibe and what vibe works for you. Right. And so it's the same thing. Like, you can discern what works for you, what doesn't. Discernment and critically examining what you're putting into your life will help you know what needs to stick and what doesn't. That goes back to Unique saying self-awareness. Be self-reflective of your prior dating experience and know what works for you. And again, what doesn't. Examine the things that worked and what didn't. And I won't give you that cheesy saying that there is someone out there for everyone, because that math don't math all the time. But I will say, showing up as your most authentic self, being clear on what your boundaries are, sticking to your standards, being flexible with expectations, being aware of the love bombing and the breadcrumbing, being willing to be vulnerable can only attract others like you. You put good energy out there. The idea is that you will receive that good energy back. And it doesn't always mean in a lifelong partner, but you keep at it, and eventually you never know what will come. But if you don't try, then you're just kind of left out there. The resources. I'm really big, and you know what? I just left them on my night table. But you can find these anywhere. Conversation cards. I was talking to Unique about these, because some people are really nervous and they are not good at the initial conversation. So I have a friend on her dates, she pulls a couple and then makes it like a fun little game while they're eating, or before dinner arrives, and it kind of breaks up the ice. She does a very easy to answer one. Others just I'm a good questions person, so I usually just know enough to want to know certain things, but not everybody is. That probably goes for me talking to strangers, right, and asking questions. However, I understand there's no knock if you can't, but you can build that by getting those conversation cards and being willing to ask somebody. Maybe even memorize it if you don't want to be the person who brings out the cards. I don't care. I'm gonna bring out a card and be like, oh, let me show you. But any of them, all of them are really good. I think there's one called talking points, is a good one. So yeah, you can really just Google and look at the reviews and see which one works for you.
Okay, Unique, what would you like to share on this?
Yeah, I mean, go follow forthepeople.community, because we always outside. We always doing community impact work. You might find the love of your life in the garden, because we always doing community gardening, cleaning the block. So I would say, again, how we started this: get outside, beyond the hookahs, the dance floor, and the alcohol. Go grocery shopping, hit a library or two. Be repetitive in some of your local markets and restaurants, and hopefully you find the right connections there.
Love that. Love that. Before we close, a couple last things for me. So in terms of resources, Dr. Raquel Martin is one that I love to follow. I'm sharing her in the chat. She actually gets good in terms of the definition. She's a licensed therapist and gives great advice on Instagram. There's also a book that I recently read that gets into the balance between masculine and feminine energies. That's not male and female, that's energies. We both have masculine and feminine energies, regardless of our gender identity. And it just talks about how that will always balance itself in a relationship. So regardless of the type of relationship, it gets into what healthy masculinity and healthy femininity, and toxic masculinity and toxic femininity, and how that yin and yang energy will always figure out how to play out. So how you can pull yourself out of those if you find yourself in a dynamic that seems to be spiraling. Great read. And then finally, I wanted to share Logan Ury, who was the therapist on Later Daters, which was the Michelle Obama produced Netflix documentary on dating over 40. It might have been older than that, actually. Most of the people might have been over 50. She wrote a book called How Not to Die Alone that gives some really good practical strategies for things that we can identify and continue to improve. If you enjoyed this session, I just want to remind you to subscribe to the Good Lounge. You can donate to us. We want to continue to give away resources. I am also going to give away a therapy session, a connection with Dr. Whittington. So just put in the comments if you'd be interested in that, and we'll randomly select someone and get in contact with you to give that away. Thank you so much for making time to join us today.